Welcome to Blue Collar Reformation, PBR here again, talking about truth and virtue. This is the second installment on this series, and today we're going to be speaking about specifically the kinds of virtues that make up an excellent Christian. Now, as we think about this, we think about the terms in the Old Testament, the one who is called a Hayil Giborim, those are men of might and valor. There's also Hayil Giborah, they're women of might and valor. And there are also, in the New Testament, the words arete, which refers to a virtuous man, and other things that we could say about that. But basically, understanding that virtue, the external expression of our religion, and the things that we do and the things that we say, are the outpouring of our very hearts. They are the internal soul of man coming forth in good works. And in the last installment, I pointed out that basically we're doing these for the purpose of the glory of Christ, the glory of the Lord, but also because we are holy in Him. So the virtues are the expression of our internal intellect and will, emotions, everything in us being poured out in that which we do. So we should be full of good works, having zeal for good works, and those works are virtuous, external things that we do and say. And we need to be cultivating virtue as Christians. And a lot of times we don't talk about virtue, but virtue is a very helpful thing for organizing our ethics. They have very good specifics for us of things that we should be doing. They kind of categorize things in life of how we should be living, and they really tell us a path of how to live. It's a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. And so as we look at these, we're going to look at Philippians chapter 4, verses 8 through 10, key passage on this, and also informed by various theologians and ethicists from the Christian church. As I've been thinking about this subject and trying to learn from it myself, I realized that one of the things that's really missing is a sense of gravity and dignity. There's so much informality, and there's almost an aggrandizement of being informal. It's more relatable. It's something that people really, can feel like they're part of. And distinguishing that also from austerity and pretense, that people are pretentious and they're kind of, holier than thou. And both of these things can bring people to gravitate to you or repel them away. But I think instead what we ought to do is realize that God has called us to gravity, which means the weightiness of something, but also really the dignity of respecting that God has given us a good name, but not only our own good name, but the good name of Christ that we bear. And so we ought to be cultivating these virtues and doing good works that fit with the glory of God for the sake of God's glory, having placed His name upon us. So we have to have respect for ourselves and our own good name, but we also have respect for God's name that He's placed upon us. So as we work through this, I'm going to point out some of the various virtues that Paul gives, as Thornwell says about Paul, the way of an excellent man, the characteristics of what makes up an excellent man of God. And these are the things that Paul says to dwell upon. In other words, to think about, to consider. And this is the schematic of what an excellent man is in general. First of all, true. Second, honest. Third, just. Fourth, pure. Fifth, of good report. Sixth, lovely. And seventh, praiseworthy. That these are the things that Paul says that we ought to be. Now, there are other virtues that are expressed. There's the theological virtues of faith, hope, and love. There's the virtues of the officers, of elders and deacons in the pastoral epistles. But we begin with these because they are universal to all, that we ought to be cultivating. Now, we should be aspiring to those other virtues in the other passages, but specifically focusing on these because they help us organize quite a bit of life. The first is truth. This means that we need to have knowledge of ethics and of doctrine, and that through that knowledge, basically what ends up happening is you express it in your life. It is a terrible hypocrisy to have a lot of knowledge but never express the knowledge, never use the knowledge, never have a heart for the knowledge where you're actually putting it into practice. We don't want to be just confessional and orthodox. We want to be orthoprax and practical. And so truth must be expressed. We need to know the truth, but we need to be people of the truth, practicing the truths of the Christian faith according to the Scriptures. The second is honesty. So honesty refers to of your heart being true with others. And this may mean not only telling the truth and not telling lies, but it also has to do with saying what needs to be said in season or out of season. to say what needs to be said for somebody who needs tough love, to be about good works and find happiness and true joy, not in seeking pleasure and not in just being close to people because you let things slide, but being honest and true because you can correct what is wrong in somebody's life and you can correct something that is wrong in your life with being honest with yourself and therefore find greater sanctification for both you and for others around you. This doesn't mean just being pig-headed and foolhardy and saying whatever is on your mind, having hot takes and being based, but it does mean that there's some level of saying the things that are unpopular. And we need to be able to say the truth. We need to be able to not only say the truth, but also be honest in what we do, to do things in an upright way, and to be able to look at it and see whether we're doing things right or wrong. Then there's justice. We need to be just. That is, to treat people as we would want to be treated, to treat people with equality that has to do with before the face of God. Justice has to do with not violating people's property, not violating the things that are right and good to do, and also to be upright before the Lord. So justice refers to not equal outcomes for everybody, but rather it has to do with, instead of those political and economic Marxist categories, justice refers to doing that which is right according to God's law to other people. Now, this is where the rubber really meets the road with ethics, because that means we really need to do what is right and fair, good and true for other people. What God has said, we must do. We must follow by that. And in those good works, we will find true happiness, a deeper happiness than mere pleasure. Then there is purity. This refers to temperance, that you take all things with a bit of temperance, that you don't look at anything in the world as something that is sinful in itself, but as something you have to take dominion over. And that even those good gifts that God has given you that are good, you need to have temperance about. There is a lot of pleasure seeking in the world. People try and find their good. They try and find their existence and purpose in pleasure. They find their identity in pleasure. Specifically today with the sexual revolution, people find their identity in that. They find their identity of being a foodie or of being any kind of pleasure seeker, to find the perfect wave, to find the perfect mountain to climb, to find the perfect way of doing things. Whatever it is, people try and find that perfect pleasure and think in that they'll find happiness. But in reality, what we're told is to be pure. And that purity is that chastity of our bodies, that temperance of our taste, and the modesty with which we dress and practice, so that we have a purity in all that we do. So purity refers to this person basically being seeking after the protection of other people's purity, but also my own and my own good name along with it. Which leads us to a good report. So a good report refers to things that are good for your reputation. You need to be serious about your own reputation. You need to recognize the things you say reflect your internal self to other people, and that a good report refers to your good name around other people. So you should learn what it means to be polite, what it means to be upstanding, what it means to be following the customs around you, so that you won't be treated as a pariah around other people, but also to realize, with combining this with the others, that you still need to be righteous, still need to be true, still need to be pure and just, of course. Then there's praiseworthy, that we need to seek those things that men see as giving praise to other men because we bear the name of God. In other words, to really do and really enact those things that God has called us to do. So if something is a challenge that may cause you harm, but you know it's the right thing to do, doing that thing often receives the praise of men. But we as Christians don't do it for our own praise, but for the sake of our reputations as Christians bearing the name of God. So this is all directed to the very glory of God. And then finally, lovely, whatever is lovely. This refers to the affections, the tenderness, benevolence, caring for others, making sure that we have a true, heartfelt charity and charitable attitude toward others to seek their good. Not to seek their good at the expense of the other virtues of being just and pure, but seeking their good in the ultimate way of seeking to do what's right to them according to God's law. So in these things, we find the pattern that Paul gives of an excellent man. And as we think through it, and as we practice these things as a group of people who will watch on YouTube, and myself as well, let's develop these virtues as much as we can to the glory of God. Aristotle, he taught that the highest good was being consistent with reason in what you do. For the Christian, it's being consistent with the truth of Scripture to the glory of God in a holy relationship of covenant with Him, of greater value, of everlasting value, of things that live forever. And so I commend you to it. This is PBR signing off. Thank you for watching Blue Collar Reformation. We are here to equip you with wisdom of the Word. The aim is to apply the system of doctrine taught in Scripture to every square inch of faith in life. We are on Twitter and Substack for your sake. Links are in the description. Share with your recalcitrant and reprobate friends and family freely. Blue Collar Reformation is a lightweight and mobile outreach platform. Take it in hand and enter the fray. Godspeed.